I've always wanted a cabin, a place that's hidden in the woods, a place where I can go to be alone, a place where I can make memories with friends. But getting a cabin is not easy. You need land or a lease, and you need money. Sometimes lots of it. I've never had either of those. I also have zero skills when it comes to building a cabin, but I want to do it, and I'm not afraid to fail, and I'm not afraid to chase my dreams. When I was a kid, I would imagine myself at a cabin, fishing, hunting, playing in the woods. These aren't activities that my family embraced, and that's okay. But sometimes I'd be lucky enough to hitch a ride with my buddies who would go to their family's cabins, or maybe I would go to a cabin with the Boy Scouts. Those were special times for me. As I got older, more and more of my friends started getting into cabin life. My buddy Chris, back home in Labrador, scored one of the best cabins you will find anywhere. 3 bedrooms, a nice living room, a nice kitchen, a big barbecue deck, and a beautiful lake. He's had it for years and still treasures it to this very day. Darts, beer, food, snowmobiling, guitar, good laughs. It's heaven. And if I'm not there, you might find me at Jerry's cabin. That place is beautiful, sitting on the shores of Lake Melville, tucked under the Mealy Mountains. It's wild and free there. A beautiful wood stove keeping us warm, George Jones on the radio, fresh fish out of the river. This place is special. Both of these cabins just deepen my desire to have my own cabin. I think a lot of us have that desire to be free, breathing in the fresh air, and getting back to the wilderness. Our bodies and minds naturally reset after a good dose of nature. It's where we come from, and we need it. Now that I'm older, I'm doing everything I can to make my dream come true. And it all started back in 2016. I bought a tent and I had no idea where I was going to put it. But I knew if I was going to spend the money that I'd figure it out. And that's exactly what I did. I have a friend who had a canvas tent for years. And he set it up on a remote lake and left it there. I scouted the same lake and found a perfect spot. That's what a lot of people without leases do around here. They just use canvas tents. Tents aren't cabins. And there's a big difference. Around here, a cabin, I guess anywhere, a cabin is a permanent structure. And a permanent structure without leases up here are frowned upon. And if they're found, they're often nailed with eviction notices. Now, for the most part, from what I gather, tents are left alone. So long as they have a soft roof and the walls are no higher than 4 feet. They also should not be up for too long. How long? That's undefined. There's a lot of gray area in all of this. Now, you should know I have applied for a lease to build a cabin, but the wait is brutal. It's been well over a year since I started the process, and there's no indication that I'll have an answer anytime soon. So, back to the tent. After a couple of years freezing in a 14 by 16 canvas tent with a steel frame on frozen ground, I decided to get a smaller, cozier tent that I could put on a platform, like a little fake cabin. I knew if I was to do this, I'd have to be careful and keep it more tent than cabin. That meant the roof would need to remain soft and the walls less than 4 feet. I also decided to make the platform out of pallets. What I was embarking on couldn't be defined as a permanent structure. That said, if faced with needing to tear it down, I knew I had to build it in a way where deconstruction would be simple, and it needed to be able to be taken apart in about a day. I put this hot tent fake cabin together having no idea what I was doing. I would lie in bed at night and think about all the little problems that I faced. How would I build the frame? Could I do it alone? Where would I get the pallets? How would I get them into the woods? How would I tie them together? The pallet problem was a big one. It took a lot of work just to get 9 decent pallets for the floor. I had to find them, measure them, transport them, and hammer them. Then drag them to the new tent position, level them on rock and snow, and screw on 1/2-inch plywood. Before I knew it, I had a floor, and the feeling was the best. Oh yeah, all of this while it's -40 outside. Then it was on to the frame. For this, I went with spruce 2x4s and 1/4-inch plywood. Now, there are likely many different ways to go about this. I decided to just go with what made sense in my head, but that doesn't mean it made sense once the saw hit the wood. I made quite a few mistakes, and I took a lot of risks, like when I decided to put the tent on over the rafters. That was both fun and frightening at the same time. Even though this new tent is just a 10x12, it's big, and awkward, and it's heavy. I needed ratchet straps and lumber and shovels just to get the job done. Everything was wobbling, and I thought my frame was going to collapse, but it didn't. I knew I was putting myself in a situation where I was going to have to work on strengthening the tent with the canvas on it. But it turns out I couldn't even zipper the tent. My frame was way off, so that work would have to wait. The tent's not high enough compared to the eaves. This angle I'm on right here, it's got to be a bit steeper. This is the beauty of this project. I'm a guy with very little experience when it comes to building stuff with wood, so I knew I was going to be learning a lot from my mistakes along the way. Every mistake was a challenge, and I loved each and every one of them. I can say all my mistakes almost made me happy. That's because I had no choice but to figure things out, and that meant I was learning and growing. A little help from a couple of friends, the tent was sitting perfectly on the frame, and I could zipper it closed. Oh, baby! Then I put those 4-foot walls around the frame, and that really strengthened the whole structure. At this point, I had been slowly chipping away at it for over a month. My little fake cabin was ready for an overnighter. I can tell you that this moment is seared in my brain. Bringing in everything that night was the most amazing feeling. I remember these moments. I remember setting up the camera for this shot. I remember bringing in the stove and placing it on a beautiful new platform. It was level. Now, that was a big moment for me, considering my stove was never level in my old tent. That night I was giddy when I went to bed. I was living my dream. But there was so much more to do. What should I do for a door? Do I need a better table? What about a little shelf? Maybe a storage area? A heat reflector? All these ideas, and all the time in the world. They say the journey is the reward, and that is so true. But of course, when you end up in your own little paradise, so is the destination. I don't care that I don't know all the right terms for what I'm doing. I don't care if it fails an inspection. I don't care what anyone thinks. At this point, I'm on my way, and I'm as proud as I've ever been. So I decided to go with a 4-foot door. That was first on my list of bonus features. It swings inward, and it has a latch. What I like about this is that I can perch myself at the door, drink my coffee, and just look out at this incredible view. The door also gives me an added sense of security. I know animals can find their way into this tent, but I feel protected and safe in here. I don't carry a rifle, so any added level of protection is so great to have. Then it was on to a loft. When your fake cabin is only 10 by 12, having a place to store extra stuff is awesome. Also, when you have a tent that's 9 feet high, you might as well build a little loft. This took hardly any brain power, even for me. A couple of sheets of plywood left over from the build, a few deck screws, and 2 pieces of lumber, and I had myself a loft. This is so basic. I think what makes it special is that I did it and that it works. I've had stuff up there for 2 years now, and not once have I worried that it was going to come tumbling down on my head. And check this out. I love this little folding table. I bought it secondhand and it fits perfectly here. I've spent a lot of time sitting at this table. Oftentimes I just sit there and look at the tent. I look at what I've accomplished. I often think about all the people who watch my channel and dream of getting out there, having something like this. And I know if I can do it, anyone can. I even built a little flip-out table for my stove. It works perfectly. I also have a 30-pound propane tank sitting on the outside of my tent that feeds the stove. And if you haven't cooked with a propane stove, you have to do it. Something about that flame, that hiss, and that heat. Food cooks fast on a stove like this, and you can't beat that when you're out in the woods with a hearty appetite. I spend lots of time out here, cooking and eating. It's a big part of life in the woods. When I think about going to cabins, I think about food. Lots of meat, beer, potatoes, chocolate, and chips. You know, the good stuff that you want to eat every day. That's what a cabin is for. Oh, man. It's a place to treat yourself. I've been treating myself to a dream. My dream. This may not be a cabin, but I pretend it is for now. I've added a little wood store, and now I've got a beautiful handmade stove keeping me warm. Best of all, though, I still have a dream. I'm not giving up on getting a cabin. I lie in bed at night and imagine how it will look, how I'll mess it up, and how I'll fix it. I imagine it being actually insulated with a solid roof and a real floor, walls higher than 4 feet, maybe a couch with beds, maybe a kitchen area, like a real kitchen area. The dream might be the best part of it all. It gives me purpose. But for now, I'm just going to keep enjoying this little fake cabin for as long as I can. Thanks for watching. I'll be back really soon.